Hey everybody, welcome to another segment of Talking Cubs. I'm your host Ryan Davis. I'll be joined in a minute by my co-host Sean Sears. We're continuing our player preview segments today, talking about a Cubs player that I think you could accurately say has ice in his veins. So Sean, is it possible that Kyle Hendricks is going to be even better in 2019 than he has already?
Yeah, I think 2019 could be a really big season for Kyle. As we saw with a lot of the Cubs last year, at least pitching wise, the first half wasn't necessarily great. I think Kyle finished with an ERA just under 4 for the first half of baseball. Wasn't necessarily a terrible season, but it just seemed like he was struggling to hit his spots. I know there was the talk that Kyle wasn't able to hit like 87, 88 miles an hour, which is a concern because he doesn't throw hard at all. But he figured it out in the second half of the season. He ended the year, I think, with a 2.8 ERA, something along the lines of that. Really good second half of baseball. Showed last year that he was, I think, at this point, probably the ace of this staff. I'd be surprised if Kyle Hendricks isn't the opening day starter this year.
Yeah, I would still think that they would go with Lester as kind of a ceremonial thing. But yeah, I think it's been for a while now that Hendricks has been the best starter on the team, at least in my opinion. And you mentioned last year he had a mechanical issue. I actually was covering some games for NBC Sports Chicago and St. Louis when the Cubs were down there in July, and I went and did a story on Hendricks where I talked to him for a while, and he talked at great length about what the mechanical problem was and how he had fixed it. He talked about basically shifting weight to his backside when he pushed off the rubber in his stride, and how that had been kind of off for him. And he said at that time it hadn't been great, but it'd been a little bit better the last couple games. And he said at that time, he's like, no, I've totally figured it out. I'm confident I'm going to be really good going forward. So I went back for this and looked at his stats from that start in St. Louis through the end of the year, and it was 12 games, 79 innings pitched, 66 strikeouts to just 10 walks, and a 2.51 ERA. So clearly he did have it figured out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like what we were saying, Kyle Hendricks seemed to change and be the guy that we were expecting to be after. He was kind of not necessarily looking like himself on the mound. And as you kind of mentioned, that change he makes, I mean, that's Kyle Hendricks for you. He's just the guy that's going to be constantly watching video, trying to figure out what he's doing differently. He's just outthinking batters a lot of times and trying to be smarter than the other guy is on the mound. And while that's awesome, it's great to see Kyle Hendricks go and do that. You just don't see a lot of pitchers do that the way Kyle Hendricks does, because a lot of them do have 97-mile-an-hour fastballs or changeups or some type of breaking ball that can really throw people off. And Hendricks has one of the best changeups in baseball, but it's paired with an 88, 89, like maybe 90-mile-an-hour fastball that doesn't do a lot of movement. So what Hendricks has to do is create a lot of deception. And when he can figure that out and work the fastball and the changeup and occasional curveball in, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, as we've seen throughout the year. So if Kyle can keep locating the bottom half of the strike zone, keep missing bats with this changeup and put the ball on the ground, there should be no problem with Kyle Hendricks reporting another, 250, sub 250 ERA season for the Cubs.
Yeah, and last year, I mean, if you just look at the ERA, it wasn't terrific. It was 3.44 for the season. A lot of that did have to do with the fact that he had that stretch in the middle of the year where he got out of his mechanics. He had a similar stretch in 2017 where he lost velocity. That was related to his release point. Last year, though, a career high 199 innings. He's what I think is becoming known as a FIP beater. In his career, he has a 3.07 ERA with a 3.52 FIP. His FIP the last 2 years has been a bit higher. I noticed in the PECOTA projections, they had him for a very low WARP, which is Baseball Prospectus's WAR, essentially. And I saw that Harry Pavlidis, who I think a lot of Cubs fans probably know of if you're on Cubs Twitter, he was talking about how I guess BP is needing to come up with, or is working on coming up with, kind of an adjustment in PECOTA to account for guys like Hendricks, because he is such an outlier in the whole system. Wow, I completely messed that up. Let me start over like
at a point. Take your
time. Because he is kind of an outlier in that whole system.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, projection systems aren't necessarily factoring what Hendricks does really well as positive things. Maybe not necessarily hurting him, but it doesn't rate him as high as guys like like Carlos Martinez has a really high WARP right now for baseball perspectives. There's a lot of these guys that throw hard, miss bats, and they really weigh the ability to keep the ball out of the actual field as a better metric than it would be just putting the ball in play and getting out. So it's interesting to see how a guy like Hendricks can get weighed down, but you think about like the type of like exit velocity launch angle you can get off Kyle Hendricks from his changeup. Like there's no one squares Kyle Hendricks up. No one hits him hard, as long as he's pitching well. And honestly, that's and outside the box type of strategy that we don't see a lot of times with some pitchers, and particularly the top pitchers in the game, the guys like Scherzer that can miss bats, can throw hard, that mow guys down. Kyle Hendricks kind of, in the sense, almost uses people's aggression against them and still converts the same amount of outs. So, I mean, I love Kyle Hendricks. I have a soft spot for Kyle. I know you do too. So.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, mostly because I just enjoy watching him pitch. I mean, everyone talks about Kershaw as like appointment viewing as a pitcher, and I love watching Clayton Kershaw throw. But if I have one appointment viewing pitcher in baseball, I would probably say it's Kyle Hendricks, because I love watching him go to work and the way he carves up batters. And then as the baseball side of it, the baseball writer side, he's my absolute probably favorite guy in baseball to talk to about pitching. So I love going in the locker room and having conversations with him about that, because he's so accessible, he's so intelligent, he's so friendly and genuine. And he will just, if you show any sort of like this much knowledge about pitching or pitching mechanics or something that he's doing, he will just like open up the floodgates of like, well, here's what I know about my pitching mechanics, and here's what I'm doing with this. And he's just a joy. He's just an absolute joy to have to, from the baseball side of it, from like the actual writer with access kind of side.
Yeah, he's a great guy through and through. Well, like you talk about, I mean, I know you have experience with this too, being in the locker room with major league players. A lot of people don't want to talk. Kyle Hendricks, like Ryan said, just an inkling of an idea of, the type of grip he's holding on his changeup. He's going to tell you everything you want to know about that. And it's great, because that's exactly what you want from a guy who is looking at the game in some ways the same perspective as someone like you and I are. So it's great to be able to have that conversation with him, because I'm sure if you tried to have the same conversation with someone like Kyle Schwarber, as nice as the guy he is, he's just trying to get out of the locker room. He's going to go take swings. He's going to go see his wife. He doesn't want to talk baseball with you after the game's over. But Kyle will sit there forever.
Yeah. Hendricks will sit there and talk to you about stuff, just forever, like you said. And guys like Schwarber, Ian Happ, they're a little, I don't know if you want to say introverted. I guess Happ is definitely a little more introverted. Some of those guys, I don't blame them necessarily. They just they don't want to stand there and talk to the media about that kind of stuff, especially not in like the media scrum, like the one-on-one situation. They don't really love having those conversations with people they don't know so well. So, it is what it is. But what do you guys think about Kyle Hendricks going into 2019? Are you excited about him? Is he one of your favorite pitchers to watch, like for me and Sean? Let us know in the comments down below. If you're enjoying our player previews, go check them out. We've done a few already. Guys like Anthony Rizzo and Jose Quintana, several other guys. Go check all those out. We have them on our channel. And make sure to go down and click that subscribe button if you're enjoying this. Seeing the subscribers start to pile up really motivates us to keep this stuff going. And we're having fun with it. So we hope you're enjoying it too. Thanks for watching, guys. We will talk to you again next time.